Enjoy cooking? You might become a chef. Interested in education? You'll probably end up as a teacher. As for me, I wanted to fly, so I pursued a career as a pilot. Over the years, I managed to earn a pilot's license with several certifications and eventually secured a position with the Air National Guard. Unfortunately, when it was time for me to move on, none of the major airlines were hiring, so I've been flying with a small regional carrier for about 2 years now. Through all the ups and downs, the one constant in my life has been my wife, Amy. Amy came from a troubled background with alcoholic parents. She was probably the poorest kid in school, even compared to me. Amy was an awkward, freckled girl with a nose that seemed too big for her face and ears that stuck out, which she tried to hide with her long, light brown hair. We met in 3rd grade and have been inseparable ever since. It was always the two of us against the world. I remember telling Amy in junior high that I wanted to be a pilot. Without missing a beat, Amy said, "Kevin, if you're going to fly planes, you've got to promise to take me along." I took the first opportunity I had to marry her. While I never grew taller than 5'6", Amy shot up to nearly 6 feet. She was slender, with almost no hips, and even her bust barely reached an A-cup. Despite her freckles and her nose and ears not quite fitting the traditional beauty standards, to me, Amy was the most stunning bride in the world. That perception didn't change even after our courthouse wedding. Amy followed me from bases in Asia to the Pacific and everywhere in between. She turned any place into a home, whether it was freezing in Greenland or sweltering in Panama. A master of bargain hunting, she could stretch my modest salary by making deals on everything from groceries to furniture. Amy could negotiate with anyone. Her one weakness was a love for postcards. She had to collect a postcard from every place we visited. Throughout all our relocations, Amy carried boxes of postcards with us from one side of the globe to the other. "Kevin," she would say when I teased her about her postcard collection, "I know where I come from, but I want to remember where I've been. We're not settling down until we reach the top." We used a significant amount of our savings, along with my modest salary, to purchase a fixer-upper home. It was a charming, spacious old house with a large yard and a garage, full of character. Regional airline pilots now earn less than a McDonald's manager, and my starting salary was just over $25,000. I didn't mind, though, because I had Amy and got to fly almost every day. What could be better? Amy took a job with a real estate developer to help make ends meet. My life revolved around Amy, flying, renovating the house, and working on a Ford F-250 truck I had bought cheaply. At first, Amy commuted by bus, but soon she had a new Camry. She said she needed dependable transportation with me being away so often. Our bed life was fantastic. We explored every corner of the house multiple times, the apartment above the garage, and even the backyard on a few warm, starry nights. Despite Amy's continuous job applications to every airline from American to Federal Express, hiring was stagnant due to rising fuel prices and security concerns. I was willing to be patient. Life was good. One morning, I was waiting for a ride to work with Jose, our chief mechanic. Jose had been incredibly helpful with my truck, as we had replaced or rebuilt every part from the rear end to the injectors. Jose had escaped from Cuba over 2 decades ago on a leaky homemade raft with his girlfriend, now wife, Maria, when he was just 17. After serving in the military, he trained as an aircraft mechanic. He had a bunch of kids and was the proudest father you could ever meet. Today, we were joined by his youngest son, Angelo, who was a freshman in high school. "Good morning, Jose and young Mr. Angelo," I said after fastening my seatbelt. "Jose, could we make a stop at King One Developers? I need to drop off this cell phone." I held up my wife's cell phone, which Amy had left on the kitchen table that morning. I was surprised she forgot it, since she was always chatting or messaging on that little pink device. She was never without it. Angelo, like any teenager, had earbuds in and was listening to an MP3 player. When he noticed the phone in my hand, he took out his headphones. "Hey, Mr. Kevin, that's a cool cell phone. Can I take a look at it?" "Sure thing, Angelo." I said, tossing the phone into the back seat for him. Juan was fiddling with the radio when his son Angelo blurted out, "Oh, ho, ho, someone's going to get lucky today." "What do you mean, Angelo?" I asked, turning to face him in the back seat. "Take a look at this message, Mr. Kevin," Angelo said, turning Amy's screen towards me. "Protein lunch for 2 days?" "Oh," I read from the screen. "What the hell does that mean?" Angelo suppressed a laugh. "Today is a protein lunch with a wink and an open mouth." I turned pale. "Now watch the next one." Angelo scrolled down the page. "That means let's get intimate." I felt that I would be coming to breakfast soon. Angelo continued to translate for me. Then she wrote a message. "Who are you? VBS TD2M. It's short for okay, just for you. Smile big and tell me obscenities." Wow, she's into intimacy and hot conversations, this freaky chick. To suppress my gag reflex, I smiled as Angelo continued to read. SIDA 3. Mr. Kevin, this is the text for consider it done. Anywhere. Anytime. Anywhere. Well, I think the dude has come to terms with it. Juan abandoned the radio conversation with a frustrated sigh. Damn kids and their cell phones. Maria, my wife, and I went through all that trouble to learn and teach them proper English. Now these kids are speaking in some sort of code. He looked at me. "Captain, are you all right? You look as white as a ghost." Jose referred to all the pilots as captain. "No, Jose. I'm suddenly feeling very ill. Could you take me back home?" I tried to sound composed. "Angelo, could you find out who sent these texts and maybe forward them to me?" "No problem, Mr. Kevin." Angelo began pressing buttons on his phone. "They're on their way. The sender is someone named Troy 1K Boss." Troy Kingston was Amy's boss, the head of King 1 Developers. How cliché, a secretary having an affair with her boss, with me as the oblivious, cuckolded husband. It felt like a bad script was unfolding. "Don't worry, Captain," Jose said as he turned the car around. "I'll get someone else to cover your shift today. Do you want me to take you to a doctor?" "No, thank you, Jose." I fought to keep from throwing up in his car. "I just need to get home and sort this out." The road home seemed endless. Angelo continued to read the messages out loud, making me feel more uncomfortable with each new message. "Mr. Kevin, this girl is crazy. Listen to this message from last month." 02/6/2018, Angelo said, translating. "Today and tomorrow I am ready for intimacy." "Angelo," Jose warned his son, "I don't want people talking like that in my car. Return this phone to the captain." "Okay," Angelo sighed, closing my wife's phone. He returned Amy's phone to me. "Mr. Kevin, who is this baby? Is there any chance that you will introduce us?" I put Amy's phone back in my pocket. "I'm sorry, Angelo, I'm not sure who she is, but she won't be here long." I barely made it to the bathroom on the ground floor before I lost all my breakfast. I washed my face with cold water and sat on the bathroom floor, leaning against the tiled wall. It was the first bathroom that Amy and I renovated. We didn't know much about tile work and even less about plumbing, but we did it together. Our celebration of the completion of the renovation made me smile for 2 days. Could Amy have cheated? I thought. Troy Kingston was in his 50s, almost 2 decades older than Amy and me. He fit the stereotype of a real estate developer. Twice married, 6 feet tall, toned, always tanned, with dyed hair and parted hair covering his bald spot. He had a loud voice and was known for his firm handshake and hearty jokes accompanied by backslaps. Maybe it's just a joke, I desperately hoped. Maybe it's just a rude flirtation between Amy and Troy. I knew that Troy had 2 types of jokes, the ones that were meant for mixed company, and the rude ones that he told when there were only men around. It must have been like that. Otherwise, why would Amy write messages and use terms like an ignorant teenager? Amy was writing all these messages about intimacy, something that I knew from experience was completely unacceptable. How could a middle-aged man like Troy even know these teenage terms in texts? I clung to that hope like a lifeline. After that, I felt a little better and my breathing started to return to normal. I decided to stop by Amy's office on the pretext that I wanted to take her to her favorite diner to find out what was going on. When I got up from the floor, I noticed that it was almost 11:30 in the morning. How long have I been sitting here? Feeling stupid, I got into my truck and drove to Amy's office. As I entered the offices of King Wern Developers, I wondered if this was going to turn into one of those funny stories Amy and I would laugh about later. I was planning to give Troy, her boss, a hard time, but I knew he'd just laugh it off. I asked the receptionist to call Amy to the front. After making a few calls, the receptionist informed me that Amy wasn't available. I mentioned I had something to return to Amy, and she provided me with Amy's cell phone number. I already have that, I said with a chuckle, holding up Amy's phone. I just need to get it back to her. Oh, said the receptionist. She's not here right now. I think I saw her leave with Mr. Kingston. They usually go out to his place or the club for lunch. Would you like to leave the phone with me? Trying to push aside my uneasy feeling, I replied, No, it's fine. I'll catch up with her later. I tried to steady my breathing as I made my way up the driveway to Troy Kingston's house. I'd been here once before at an office Christmas party. The place was a gaudy, oversized McMansion, constructed from plywood and plaster. It seemed flimsy enough that a strong gust could topple it. It boasted an Olympic-sized pool, a sunken 3-car garage beneath the bedroom, and even a faux koi pond in the yard. Troy Kingston's large red H2 Hummer, sporting the King 1 vanity plate, was parked out front, so it was clear that Troy and Amy were inside. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in. I could hear noise coming from the upstairs bedroom. Bracing myself for what I might find, I climbed the stairs towards the master bedroom. Pressing my ear to the door, I could hear the sound of the shower running. I pulled out Amy's phone and pressed a speed dial button. From inside the bedroom, I could hear the faint ringtone of a cell phone. I took a step back from the door. Troy Kingston, the voice on the other end answered. Hi, Troy, I said into my wife's phone. Amy left her phone at home this morning. The office mentioned she was with you. Can you tell me where you are, so I can drop off her phone? Or better yet, let me speak to Amy. Hello, Kevin. Troy's voice boomed through the earpiece. We're heading back to the office now from the club. We just wrapped up a working lunch with a client and stopped by my house briefly to grab some papers. Amy is currently in the powder room. Just a moment. I went to the bedroom door and opened it a crack. Through a small hole, I saw Troy, completely without outerwear, covering the phone and shouting into the bathroom. Damn it, Amy, come here. Your boyfriend is in touch, asking for you. Amy came out of the shower looking the same, only with a towel on her head. She sat down on the bed, and from the ease with which she and Troy were in front of each other, it became clear how long they had been together. It wasn't a short affair. It had been going on for some time. Hi, Kevin. Amy said hello, taking the phone from Troy. He sat down next to her and started pinching her. Amy pushed his hands away, continuing the conversation, and then began stroking Troy, holding the phone between his ear and shoulder. How are you? I'm so glad you found my phone. I've been looking for it everywhere. At that moment, I pushed open the bedroom door and entered. They both froze when they saw me. Well, Amy, I said, pointing at her hand, still at Troy, I don't think you'll find your phone on Troy unless it's a cell phone detector. Wait, I get it. You're going to fortify yourself with your protein diet. Are you going to eat it with your mouth this time? Troy was the first to react. He jumped up, rushed into the bathroom, and slammed the door behind him. Amy froze on the bed. I grabbed Amy's clothes and threw them at her. Get dressed, Amy. We're leaving, and you have to explain why you think it's okay to flush our marriage down the toilet. No, Amy replied. What? Kevin, I'm not going anywhere with you. Amy crossed her arms. I'm sorry that you caught us in this state, but I really like living like this. I was in shock. You actually enjoy living like a deceitful tramp? Amy's eyes flashed with anger. I never intended to hurt you, Kevin, but I've grown accustomed to a lifestyle that you can't provide. Troy offers things that you won't be able to for years, if ever. I gestured around the room. This is what you threw away our marriage for. I'm not throwing anything away, Kevin, Amy said calmly. I'm making a choice. We had a good run for almost 15 years. I was a devoted wife, following you around the world and living modestly. It was fine then, but now I want more. I'm not interested in spending the next decade clipping coupons and hunting for sales. She removed the towel from her hair. I'm tired of shopping at Walmart for discounted toilet paper. I want everything, and I want it now, not waiting until I'm old and gray. You can't offer what Troy can. Anything you could provide now doesn't compare. Troy can give me a better life than you ever could. I hope you can respect my decision. I was speechless. My mind went blank. Respect what, Amy? A cheating wife and a man who hides in the bathroom? Amy just shrugged and looked away. I felt like I was running out of breath. I had to get out before I fainted. I threw Amy's phone at her and gave her the finger. Respect this, Amy. I headed for the door, calling over my shoulder. You two deserve each other. I have flights tomorrow, so get your stuff out of my house. I was in turmoil for the rest of the month. They say there are 7 stages of grief, but I was stuck in shock and denial for 2 weeks. How could Amy do this to me? Had I missed that many signs? Was I really so oblivious that I couldn't see what was right in front of me? I had been trained to pick up on small issues before they became major problems. As a professional, I was supposed to notice subtle cues like changes in air pressure or engine pitch. So how had I lost all situational awareness in my own life? Every morning I would wake up and turn over, expecting to see Amy, only to be hit again with the painful reality. By the 3rd week, the pain began, and it was more excruciating than any physical injury I had ever endured. Amy had torn my heart out. Research shows that the brain processes emotional pain similarly to physical pain, and I could definitely attest to that. I felt like I'd been shot. Jose, the chief mechanic, and his wife Maria were a lifeline. They were the only ones I confided in about my situation. Jose and Maria were shocked. To them, abandoning a spouse was as incomprehensible as nuclear physics. Jose had risked his life for Maria during their escape from Cuba, and Maria had nursed him on the raft for days, using up all their drinking water before they were rescued by brothers to the rescue. In America, they had both worked multiple jobs while raising 6 children. During Jose's service, Maria had started and still managed a house-cleaning business. The anger phase of my grieving process was abruptly triggered at the end of the month by a call from my bank. I found out I was overdrawn and my checks were bouncing. A meeting with a bank officer pushed my anger into high gear. All of my accounts were nearly empty because Amy had drained them. I attempted to secure a new line of credit but was denied. Although the officer expressed sympathy, he privately mentioned that Kingston had significant dealings with the bank, so my account was flagged. As I hurried out of the bank, a man was waiting by my truck and handed me divorce papers. Sitting in the cab, I reviewed the legal documents and realized the situation was dire. Amy was asserting that the work done on my 8-year-old truck was worth as much as her new Camry. She had emptied all the accounts, including cashing in all the stocks and bonds. Her offer was to give me the house in exchange. While the inflated estimate of the house's value and its equity with the improvements made it seem like a fair deal on paper, it was far from realistic. I had only 10 business days to get my finances in order before the bank would initiate foreclosure proceedings. Not much you can do, Mr. Kevin. I was sitting at Juan's kitchen table with his eldest son, who was in his final year of law school. He had his family law professor review the divorce papers and settlement offer. Your ex-wife Amy might use her boyfriend's lawyers to drain you financially. You might win a few skirmishes, but you'll end up losing the overall battle. I expressed my gratitude to Juan's son for his assistance and then began to plan my next steps. I urgently needed cash, and as much as it pained me, I had to sell my cherished truck. Fortunately, Juan had a friend who needed a reliable truck for his landscaping business, so the sale netted me $7,000. This helped me avoid foreclosure and cover the upcoming tax and insurance bills. Jose's wife, Maria, still ran her home cleaning business and had expanded into office cleaning as well. For the next year, whenever I wasn't flying, I worked with Maria's cleaning crews. I traveled by bike to save money, and my frugality would have made Scrooge look generous. My only substantial meals were those that Juan and Maria insisted on preparing for me. Maria also kept trying to set me up with a nice Latina girl, but I could barely afford a soda, let alone a date. By the beginning of my second year, my divorce was behind me. I managed to get ahead and even took an occasional day off to focus on working on the house. One day, I stumbled upon the boxes of Amy's postcards. My first impulse was to burn the postcards in the fireplace to help heat the house. With no room in my budget for more legal fees, I hopped on my bike and pedaled to the local library. For someone with limited resources like me, the public library was a godsend. I used one of their computers to email Amy about the postcards. Within an hour, Amy replied, "The postcards represent where I was, not where I am going. Do whatever you want with them." I printed out both my original email and Amy's response, just in case, and then pedaled back home. That night, I had a big fire in my old stone hearth. I even treated myself to some marshmallows to roast. Watching those postcards turn to ashes was the first thing that allowed me to sleep peacefully, and I woke up without a single thought of Amy. It had been more than 2 years since I'd last seen Amy in the bedroom that day. Late on a Friday night, I was flying back from the city to our small airport. As we were taxiing onto the runway, the flight attendant of our small plane leaned into the tight cockpit. "We've got an issue with a passenger," she said. "There's a guy who's had a bit too much to drink and refuses to turn off his cell phone. He's being very rude and aggressive. You tell him it's an FAA regulation," I requested. "Yep," she replied. The guy called me a few choice names. Since we were 6th in line for takeoff, I informed the first officer that I would handle it. Usually, just showing up in uniform and using some firm language was enough to calm down unruly passengers. It was an annoyance, but not a major issue, and it happened every few months. As I left the cockpit, I was taken aback to find Troy Kingston, his face flushed, sitting in the 4th seat and talking loudly into his cell phone. He was berating someone on the other end. But what truly astonished me was his seatmate, my ex-wife, or rather, what was left of her. Amy was decked out in so much bling she could have given Mr. T a run for his money. Her hair was styled and dyed a near bleach blonde white. Her once prominent nose had been replaced by a tiny button, and her ears, previously noticeable, were now barely visible. Her lips, however, were exaggeratedly pouty, looking like those of a fish. All her freckles were gone, her skin stretched so tightly it resembled a balloon about to burst. Most striking of all was her enormous chest. Amy had clearly undergone some serious augmentation. She was now sporting a double D bust, packed with what must have been 10 pounds of plastic. It was clear where our money had gone. Well, at least she didn't waste it, I muttered to myself. Recalibrating my focus, I shifted into professional pilot mode. "Mr. Kingston," I said, standing over him, "I must insist that you turn off your cell phone immediately. It may interfere with the safety of this aircraft and endanger both you and my passengers." Troy finally noticed me. "Fuck off, flyboy. I paid for my ticket. I'm trying to close a deal that's worth more than you and this crappy airline combined." I turned to Amy. "Can you please talk some sense into your traveling companion?" "Don't talk to her, you broke loser," Troy spat at me. "Just because you're flying this bus doesn't mean anything. So, fuck off." He resumed his call. I looked at Amy, but she just stared blankly out the window. Sighing, I headed back to the cockpit and picked up the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the inconvenience, but we will be returning to the terminal for a brief delay. Please remain in your seats and we will resume our flight as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. My first officer was already maneuvering us out of the taxi lane and back to our gate. He had alerted airport security and they were arriving in full force to meet us. Troy Kingston did not have a pleasant experience. 3 stern and burly Metro Airport police officers, along with a Department of Homeland Security agent, boarded the aircraft. Troy was taken off in handcuffs. The DHS agent informed me that Troy would face charges for interfering with a flight crew, endangering aircraft safety, and several other offenses. Since these charges were related to the plane being on the runway, they were federal offenses. The DHS agent also mentioned that Troy would spend the weekend in custody, as federal court sessions are not held on weekends. Additionally, he would be placed on the Do Not Fly list, effectively banning him from air travel for the next 90 days. Getting off the no-fly list would be quite challenging. To top it off, Troy would be billed for the fuel used to taxi the plane, as well as for gate time and other ground crew expenses. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, I thought as we prepared for takeoff. Jose, his wife Maria, and I were seated at their kitchen table. Their middle daughter had just been accepted into medical school. "My daughter is so smart," Jose, having had a few celebratory drinks, said. "She's going to be a brilliant surgeon." I smiled but declined his offer to top off my glass. Jose had every reason to be proud. Seeing him with Maria made me briefly reflect on my own situation with Amy. "Unlike that useless Amy," Maria interjected. "Captain, why don't you let me find you a nice Latina girl? She'll treat you right." I suppressed a smile. Maria still had her accent and loved playing matchmaker. "Maria, you know I'm a bit hesitant after my last relationship." "Ah," Maria cut in, speaking rapidly in Spanish to Jose. "Captain, you're better off without that wife. She's no good." "Can't argue with that," I said. Maria leaned in closer. "Amy didn't know what she had. Now she's all sad and unhappy." My ears perked up. I thought I'd moved past Amy for the most part. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. But of course, everyone loves a bit of gossip, especially when it's about your ex-wife. "Come on, Maria. What do you know?" I prodded her. Maria, with her small army of cleaners, domestics, and helpers, had an intelligence network that would make the CIA and Mossad envious. "Well," Maria started, "my girls tell me Amy isn't doing so well. Other wives don't like her. They're afraid she might try to steal their husbands too. They even call her the lemon tart. Amy throws a lot of parties, but no other wives attend. Some husbands show up, but they look at Amy like a dog eyeing a piece of meat. She doesn't like it, and Mr. Kingston gets upset. No more parties." I tried to suppress a laugh. Maria went on. "Amy isn't nice to the staff. They all call her Miss TOs. It stands for TTS on Stick." This time I couldn't hold back a laugh. "My girls also told me that Mr. Kingston needs blue pills to be with Amy. They say she has a lot of toys in her nightstand and always goes through many batteries, even after Mr. Kingston has been with her. He doesn't last long in bed." The story was getting better, and I was laughing out loud. "Amy is furious that Mr. Kingston won't marry her. He doesn't give her much money, and she complains constantly. The staff say Mr. Kingston doesn't trust Amy. He doesn't want her leaving the house. He's always checking her phone and interrogating her when he returns from trips. Once he even hired private detectives to follow her. When Amy found out, she was really angry." I poured myself a drink. "Well, Maria, what can you expect? There's no honor among thieves or cheaters. I hope they enjoy keeping a constant watch on each other." Marie kept going, clearly on a roll. "I always send the oldest women to Mr. Kingston's house. He's a bad man who always tries to touch younger girls. Amy always blames the girls. She complains to me that the girls are misbehaving with Mr. Kingston. I know it's not true, but if Amy can't satisfy Mr. Kingston, why does she blame the girls? No one wants to clean his house. He never tips his workers. Enough about that foolish old wife, Amy. Jose said. Captain, you and I should go golfing tomorrow. I won a round of golf at 9 Rivers Country Club in the church raffle last week. You play golf, Jose? I asked. Yes, Jose replied, glancing at his wife Maria. When we came to America, Maria noticed that all successful Americans play golf. So she got me golf clubs at an estate sale and made me take lessons. The kids are involved too. But my damn wife won't let me rent a golf cart. Maria looked at her husband with a stern expression. We need to save money for the children's college education, not waste it on renting an electric toy. You're not crippled. God gave you good legs, and it would be an insult to him not to use them. Jose threw up his hands, but I noticed a small hint of a smile on their faces. Jose reached for Maria's hand. I finished my drink, wished them both good night, and then stood up to leave. Jose brought me his son's club so that I could use them, since I recently sold mine to get some money after the divorce. It was a wonderful day. For the first time in a long time, I was not busy flying, working, cleaning, or repairing the house. My good mood soured when I left the clubhouse. There was a big picture of Troy Kingston and Amy on the wall. Troy, a member of the board of the 9 Rivers Country Club, was captured in a photo dedicated to some award or event. Jose noticed my displeasure as I stared at the framed photo. Captain, Jose said, pointing to the entrance. Could you check to see if anyone is coming over there? Why? I asked. Just be on your guard, okay? Jose replied. I turned my back on Jose and stood there for a few minutes, feeling like a complete idiot. Finally, Jose said, It's all clear, let's go. I turned around and laughed out loud when I saw what Jose had done. He took a thick black marker and drew a mustache, protruding teeth, devil horns, and large glasses on the photo of Troy. The resemblance to Amy was equally distorted by a large nose, large ears, darkened eyes, moles, and a snake's tail. Are you 12 years old? I asked, although Jose's childish prank lifted my spirits. Come on, Captain, let's go play golf. Jose grinned and we grabbed our bags. I was really enjoying myself as we neared the 7th hole. A couple was ahead of us on the green. An older man was putting, and we stayed quiet, waiting for him to finish. Suddenly he dropped his putter, clutched his upper arm, and collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Jose and I quickly abandoned our bags and raced to the green. A silver-haired woman around his age was shaking him while frantically trying to dial her cell phone. When we reached the man, he wasn't breathing. Jose, start mouth to mouth, I instructed, then began performing chest compressions. Call 911, I shouted at the woman. I have no signal, she yelled back in panic. Jose pulled out his phone. Damn it, Captain, no bars here either. I checked my own phone. It displayed the out of coverage symbol. Lady, you need to go get help, I yelled. I can't leave my husband, she cried. Go now to find an ambulance or stay and watch him die, I snapped. She turned and sprinted toward the clubhouse, her visor falling from her silver hair. Jose and I kept alternating, but after 10 minutes we started to tire. I knew we couldn't go on much longer. While I was performing mouth-to-mouth, an electric golf cart nearly ran over my foot. I hadn't heard it coming at all. A young woman was driving the drink cart. She jumped out, threw the trays of drinks and cans onto the ground, removed the back cover of the cart, and pulled out a small, hard plastic case. Kneeling beside me, she opened the case and pulled out a portable defibrillator, similar to those found in malls and airports. Step back, she instructed, pushing me aside and ripping open the guy's shirt to expose his chest. She then pointed at Jose. You, get in the golf cart and find some help. Jose leaped into the cart and sped away as fast as the little electric motor would allow. I slumped back as the woman placed sensors from the kit on the man's chest. A computerized voice from the device provided instructions. I watched as she pressed a large orange button labeled Shock. The man's chest jolted once, then twice, and his eyes fluttered open. She checked his pulse and turned to me. He's breathing, but we need to get him proper medical attention immediately, or he'll be in serious trouble. She returned her focus to the man on the ground. I wiped the sweat from my forehead, observing the woman. She was a young, attractive Latina in her mid-20s with long black hair tied back in a ponytail. Her name tag read, 9 Rivers Country Club Lourdes. I began to speak when a roar of a diesel engine came from the rough. A Ford F-250 pickup truck burst from the edge of the rough onto the green, coming to a halt beside us. The truck was covered in gardening tools, and a magnetic sign on the door read, Raul and Sons Landscaping. Jose leapt out of the driver's side. "Do you recognize your old truck, Captain? The damn golf cart's battery gave out on me. I spotted this beast and figured it would be our best bet to get the guy straight to the hospital." I gestured toward the injured man on the ground. "Jose, grab his feet. I'll handle his chest." Then I turned to the girl from the drink cart. "Lourdes, I'm Kevin, and this is Jose. Let's get this guy out of here." We crowded into the cab with Lourdes and the injured man in the front. I slid into the driver's seat, and Jose squeezed into the third seat behind the cab. After making sure everyone was strapped in, I revved the engine, and the Power Stroke diesel roared to life. "Hold on. It's going to be a rough ride." I shifted the truck into gear and drove straight across the fairway. Lourdes pointed to a trail. "Take that path. It'll get us to the front gate the quickest." "We're going off the beaten path a bit," I told her. Having flown over this area countless times, I knew the layout and terrain that would get us to the hospital the fastest. The quickest route between 2 points is a straight line, and that's the path I planned to take. It would save us 7 to 10 minutes, time we couldn't afford to waste. The Ford's tires churned up the grass as we barreled across the fairway. With the horn blaring, I zoomed past a group of golfers on the back nine and skidded over part of a sand trap. Lourdes was chatting with someone while Jose clung on for dear life in the cramped space. We were approaching the edge of the course where a high chain-link fence loomed. Lourdes pointed south. "There's an old gate about a mile that way." "We don't need any stinking gate," I snarled in my best movie accent. "Hang on!" I kept my foot on the gas as we smashed through the fence. Ford Power Stroke versus Chinese chain link. It was a no-brainer. American diesel power for the win. "Hey, Captain, I've got a signal," Jose said, holding up his phone as we sped towards the hospital, the speedometer nearing triple digits. Lourdes snatched the phone from Jose and dialed some numbers. She must have reached the hospital because she started rattling off medical terms that sounded like VTAC and pulse rhythm, completely Greek to me. Lourdes snapped the phone shut. I flashed her a grin and said, "Not bad for a drink cart, girl." The tires screeched as we skidded into the hospital entrance. Lourdes glared at me. "I'm a nurse, you dumbass." "Oh," was all I managed to say as we skidded to a halt at the ER entrance, where a medical team was already waiting. Jose and I were local heroes at the airport for about a week after the incident. However, no good deed goes unpunished. That's roughly how long it took for me to receive a registered letter from 9 Rivers Country Club. The letter contained a detailed bill for the damage my little joyride had inflicted on the golf course. The total cost of repairs amounted to $247.88 The letter demanded prompt payment. Either cash or a bank check was acceptable, warning that the matter would be handed over to their legal team if not settled soon. I had a good laugh, crumpled the letter into a ball, and shot it into the trash can. You can't get blood out of a turnip, I thought to myself. I never found out who the guy was, or if he ever recovered. He must have been important because as soon as he was stabilized, a medevac helicopter whisked him away to an awaiting air ambulance for evacuation. I tried reaching Lourdes but was told by an operator at 9 Rivers Country Club that she no longer worked there. After a week of unsuccessful inquiries on my own, I asked Jose's wife, Maria, for help. Within 15 minutes, Maria's Latina network had provided detailed information about Lourdes, everything from her phone number and address to her shoe size. Maria began recounting details about Lourdes as if she were giving a briefing. Lourdes was 26 years old, the only daughter of an immigrant handyman who she had cared for before he passed away. Her mother had died when Lourdes was a child. She had never been married, had recently completed a nursing degree but had not taken the RN board exam, and worked the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift at Mercy Nursing Home. Lourdes rented a room, was single, and enjoyed vanilla ice cream with sprinkles. "That's it?" I teased Maria after she finished. "No birthmarks or outstanding warrants?" Maria looked at me with a smug smile. "Lourdes is a good girl. She goes to Mass every Sunday at St. Paul. Do you want me to set you up with her?" She began rummaging for her cell phone. "No, Maria," I quickly replied. "Thank you for Lourdes' phone number and address. I think I can handle it from here." I heard Maria laugh as I walked out of her house. The next day I arrived with flowers in hand and found Lourdes waiting on the steps of her house. She noticed the surprise on my face and smiled. "What took you so long, Kevin?" How did you know I was coming?" I stammered. "The Latina Female Network works both ways, Kevin," Lourdes laughed. She took the flowers from me, then turned to head up the stairs. "You never stood a chance. Just stay put while I put these in some water." Spending time with Lourdes was a pleasure. She shared how she managed to juggle her job at the nursing home, school, and, until recently, her drink cart job at Nine River Country Club. "Kevin," Lourdes began, "I still have a lot of debt from student loans and tuition fees. My nursing home job covers my rent and daily expenses. The tips I made at the drink cart job were helping me pay off my debts and save for a prep course for my RN board exam and associated testing fees." "What happened to the drink cart job at Nine Rivers?" I asked. Lourdes wrinkled her nose before replying. "After our little monster truck rally, the board of directors at Nine Rivers fired me. They claimed I left the country club grounds without clocking out. I'm sure it was that board member jerk, Troy Kingston. He's been trying to get me to sleep with him since I started working there. What a sleaze. He's gone through several of the girls on staff at Nine Rivers. Right now, Kingston is having an affair with the receptionist every Wednesday afternoon during her lunch break." Lourdes shivered as if cold. "Just thinking about that creepy slime ball touching me makes me shiver. What a snake." I wasn't surprised that Lourdes knew about my marital status and situation. The Latin Female Network had generated a lot of gossip, most of which turned out to be exaggerated or incorrect. "You know Kevin," Lourdes began. "The grapevine says your wife left you to upgrade, while a smaller group thinks she left because you were gay." I stifled a laugh. "Where did the gay rumor come from?" "Well," Lourdes said, looking a bit embarrassed, "some of the cleaning crew girls were quite interested in helping you get over your grief. The hemlines of their skirts went up and the necklines of their blouses went down. Since you never seemed to notice or act on it, they assumed you must be gay." This made me laugh. "Oh, you must be talking about Anita and Orlando. There's no way I could have missed those two attractive Latin ladies and their attempts to cheer me up." I slapped my knee. "Lourdes, you can thank them for their efforts, but I have a strict policy. How do I put this plainly? I don't mix business with pleasure." Lourdes chuckled. "All right, I'm glad that's cleared up. From your response, it sounds like your ex-wife didn't have such a policy about mixing business and pleasure." "To put it bluntly," I replied, "my ex-wife Amy could eat shit." I wanted to spend more time with Lourdes. She gave me a fervent kiss as I left her on the doorstep. "Kevin, I'm not a prude, but I'm not just an easy conquest either," Lourdes said. "Can we meet up tomorrow?" "Lourdes, I'm working on the house tomorrow. I'm having a hard time with hanging a door," I responded. "Maybe you made the cutouts too small. How did you set up the disclosure?" Lourdes asked. "Who did Morty show?" I asked in confusion. Lourdes rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Kevin. Just give me your address. I'll arrive early tomorrow morning." And she did it. Lourdes grew up working alongside her father, a day laborer and handyman. Only the team from the old TV show This Old House could compete with her knowledge about the renovation and redevelopment of houses. When she was unsure of something, Lourdes would bring one of her charges from the nursing home where she worked. This place was full of retired craftsmen with every profession imaginable. These old-timers like to go outside and spend the whole day teaching us their specialties, from laying tiles to plumbing. I had the feeling that I had my own home repair contractors union. Due to our busy schedule, we had little free time left, but we made the most of every minute we spent together. With each meeting, Lourdes and I grew closer, although not as close as I had hoped. One evening, when we finished tidying up the dining table and I was in the shower, I felt a cool breeze. Through the fog, I saw a beautiful sight, Lourdes entering the booth. "Your water heater is too small, Kevin," Lourdes said, holding out her hands to my face. "We need to share the heat." We hugged. It was a magical feeling. Unfortunately, Lourdes's previous remark was true. My water heater was indeed too small. As soon as we got into it, the cold water interrupted our passion. We stumbled out of the cold shower and climbed into bed. "I'm going to show you how much I appreciate you," I replied, crawling under the covers to take care of her. I quickly muttered a prayer. "God, please let this night go better." The night went better, and the morning was even better. I almost succumbed to the offer of Jose's youngest son to send me an SMS asking me to send more protective equipment. "Lourdes," I said, giving her a kiss as she emerged from the shower. "I've been thinking about this for a while. Would you move in with me?" "Kevin, I'm not just some woman who's going to move in after a night of passion," Lourdes replied, wrapped in a towel. "Lourdes, I'd love to have you in my bed every night for passion," I said, sitting up in bed and admiring her. "But this is also a practical suggestion. We could save money living together rather than separately. It would help you reach your funding goal for that RN testing course, the RN board exam, and everything else." "Kevin, I'm not looking for a free ride," Lourdes said. "I'm not some cheap girl of easy virtue trading her company for room and board. I always pay for myself." "You still will, Lourdes," I said, reaching for her towel. "I'll trade the improvements you're making to the house for rent. Honestly, I feel like I should be paying you for everything you've done. I'm getting the better end of the deal." Lourdes pulled back from my grasp and sat on the bed next to me, deep in thought. I held my breath. Finally, she turned to me. "Kevin, do you think your friend Jose would let us borrow his truck to move my stuff on Friday?" Lourdes asked, letting go of the towel and sliding into bed beside me. We had been together for over 6 months, and the house had never looked better. I was genuinely happy. While I was still working at my cleaning job and logging as many flight hours as the FAA would permit, having Lourdes in my life made it all worthwhile. I wanted to propose to her, but I knew she wanted to get her license and establish her career before settling down. The housing crash even hit our town hard. Specifically, it devastated King One developers. Within a week, the whole operation collapsed like a house of cards. The bank recalled several loans, and King One developers crumbled. Federal regulators were investigating as Troy had been skirting the rules, mixing funds and mortgaging properties he didn't truly own. He didn't even have enough to declare bankruptcy. Nevertheless, Troy Kingston faced it with grim determination. Late one night, dressed in his finest suit, he sat in his gleaming H2 Hummer with a bottle of JW, running the engine in the closed garage and inhaling the fumes. I felt sorry for the people and the financial chaos Troy had left behind, but I didn't feel any sympathy for him personally. Curiously, I barely thought about how this might affect my ex-wife, Amy. She was in the past. I was focused on Lourdes in the future. A few weeks later, as I was walking home from the bus stop, I noticed a solitary figure sitting on my porch steps. It was dusk, but even in the darkness, I knew exactly who it was. "Hello, Amy," I said as I stood over her. "Hello, Kevin," Amy responded, glancing up at me without making any move to stand. "Amy, I wish I could say it's good to see you, but we both know that would be untrue. If you don't mind, I've had a long day and would like to get inside my house. Could you please move?" Amy didn't budge. "Why are you walking? Kevin, where's your truck?" "Amy, you're sitting on it." Amy looked around in confusion before saying, "Oh, you mean you sold it for the house. I understand now." Why, Kevin? You used to love that truck. I loved a lot of things back then, Amy. When you're forced to, you learn to do without. That truck never let me down, unlike other things from those days. The difference is, I still miss that truck. What about me, Kevin? Do you ever miss me? Us? Amy asked softly. I couldn't resist. Sure, Amy, I miss you with every bullet. Amy gasped, but I went on. Besides, Amy, how can I miss you? You're not gone yet. Kevin, please, can we talk? I just got out of the hospital 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry to hear you were ill, Amy, and I hope you recover quickly. However, I don't really see how your health concerns me anymore. You made it clear you were dissatisfied with the care I could offer. A few years ago, you chose Troy, his care, and all his toys over me. Yeah, Kevin, but I nearly died. That night when Troy did his smoking Hummer tailpipe routine in the garage, I was asleep in the bedroom above. The carbon monoxide leaking from his H2 almost killed me. Gee, Amy, I guess those H2 Hummers are indeed bad for the environment. In hindsight, maybe you should have convinced Troy to drive a hybrid. That's not funny, Kevin. I rubbed my chin with my hand. Sorry, Amy, but I'm exhausted. Let's just go our separate ways. This isn't helping either of us. Kevin, Amy pleaded, please, let's go inside for a few minutes. I need to talk to you. I sighed and pointed to the porch steps. Amy began to stand up. I had forgotten how tall she was and still couldn't get over how her double Ds were practically in my face. Careful, Amy. You might poke someone's eye out with those now, I joked. I looked up at Amy's face. She was trying to smile, but something was different. Not just her new nose and big lips. Something seemed off, but I couldn't quite make it out in the dim evening light. Amy had a walking cane in her right hand, which she was leaning on heavily, and a mid-sized gym bag she had been sitting on was crushed. I silently picked up her gym bag as she made a considerable effort to climb the steps to the front door. I moved past her, unlocked the door, and held it open for her. This is going to be one hell of a talk, I thought. Amy and I were seated at the dining room table. Under the light, I noticed a distinct change in her appearance. One side of her face was frozen in a mask-like expression. Her eyelid drooped halfway, and the corner of her mouth was curled downward. This was more noticeable due to the prominence of her lips. A small amount of drool had collected, which Amy kept dabbing with a handkerchief. It was a stroke, Kevin, Amy began. It resulted from the carbon monoxide poisoning. I was fortunate the maid arrived early. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it. The entire side of my body is quite weak, and I'm having trouble with short-term memory, which worsens when I'm tired. I'm sorry to hear that, Amy. How are you managing now? I asked. Kevin, that's why I'm here. I need some money. I spat out my coffee onto the dining room table. After a few coughs, I managed to stop choking. I got up to fetch a rag from the kitchen and returned to clean up the spill. Amy, you can't be serious. I genuinely sympathize with your situation, but I'm barely getting by myself. I didn't need to add, because of you. Amy looked down at the table, avoiding my gaze. Besides, I continued, you must have some assets from your, time with Troy. Last I saw, you had more bling than a rap star. Kevin, it's all gone, Amy said, dabbing at the corner of her mouth. Troy pawned everything in the days before everything fell apart, trying to keep creditors at bay. What was left was seized by the bankruptcy lawyers. After Troy's suicide, the police turned the house into a crime scene. It was only last week that I finally managed to get in and retrieve this bag of clothes. She pointed to the gym bag at her feet. I've been staying at a women's shelter at night and getting my meals at the church kitchen. What about social services? Disability? I asked. I've filled out countless forms, most of which take 90 days to process. The official already told me my injuries don't meet the criteria to prevent me from working or to qualify for benefits, Amy explained. Amy, Surely you have friends from Troy's circle who could help you. Not anymore. Not even back then, Amy laughed bitterly. Those women made it clear they don't want me around. They're worried about what I might do with their husbands for money. I can't blame them. I wasn't exactly discouraging male attention at that time. No one wants to help a potential gold digger. It's like buying the rope for your own hanging. Who would trust a woman who's known to be a cheater around their partner? I also managed to alienate any friends you and I used to have. They all took your side after the divorce. I've burned a lot of bridges. Okay, Amy, then sell your Camry. It's only a few years old. That model was top of the line with all the features when we bought it. It could provide a quick source of funds, I suggested. Amy's face flushed. Kevin, the Camry was never really mine. Troy got it for me when we became close. The title was actually in King One Developer's name. The bank seized it along with everything else. I was taken aback that after all these years, this new information resurfaced old emotions. It felt as if Amy's infidelity had just happened yesterday. I tried to keep my voice steady. Amy, you got that car less than 4 months after we moved here. Did you start sleeping with that guy before the ink was even dry on the mortgage? No, Kevin. Amy turned away. Troy and I didn't get, physical until about 6 months after I started working. Sorry, Amy, I said, with heavy sarcasm. I didn't mean to suggest your integrity was compromised by waiting 2 extra months before you started sleeping with your boss. Damn it, Kevin. Don't you think I know I messed up big time? This is tough. I never wanted us to end up like this. I just got swept up in everything. Amy stared at my unamused expression. Kevin, are you sure you want to hear about it? Sure, Amy. Why not? I waved my hand dismissively. They say the truth will set you free. Go ahead, give me your best shot. It's not about taking a shot, Kevin. I just want you to understand that none of this was your fault. It was all on me. I got caught up in it. It wasn't anything you did. At first, it was amazing. I was treated like a queen when I started working for King One Developers. Troy was always taking everyone out and picking up the tab. It was such a relief not to worry about prices on a menu, count my change, or fret about the cost of anything. He started paying attention to me. Troy knew all these important people, and they treated me like I was someone special. You meant something to me, Amy. You have been my wife, my partner since childhood. Wasn't that enough? I understand that now, Kevin. I wish I'd remembered that then. It all started when you went on that 3-day charter flight. Troy invited me to a $2,500 a plate political fundraiser. 1 meal would be enough for 2 months of our mortgage. Did you choose chicken or fish? Kevin, stop it. I'm trying to be serious. Troy has been very kind to me for a few weeks, but it was an important event. He bought me an evening dress for $2,000, especially for this evening, and he wasn't even bothered by the price, as if it was nothing. Everyone thought I was Troy's girlfriend and treated me exceptionally well. We even sat at the same table with the former Vice President of the United States. I was completely captivated by this spectacle. The people, the glamour, the power. I felt like a little girl. I was ecstatic all evening, practically floating. Somehow, Troy and I ended up in the parking lot and engaged in intimacy in his H2 Hummer. Looks like the valet got a good tip, I said. Kevin, it wasn't like that, Amy replied. What would you call it then, Amy? Is it gorgeous? Do intimacy in the parking lot. It's more like a scenario with a girl of easy virtue. Did you lower the roof to make it more romantic? Did you give old Troy a Hummer in his Hummer? Amy blushed slightly, but continued speaking. The next day, I was mortified and guilt-ridden, fearing you might find out. I clung to you when you came back home. Remember when we finished remodeling the downstairs bathroom? After that, I tried to make it up to you in the bedroom for my time with Troy. Wow, Amy. And here I thought you were paying all the plumbers that way. Kevin, I promised it would never happen again. I was determined to be the best wife and for us to be the best couple ever. I was going to quit that job immediately. But Troy was so full of apologies, claiming he was sorry, saying we both drank too much, and it was an accident that would never happen again. He didn't want to lose me as a valuable employee over a one-time mistake. He was so convincing, and like a fool, I believed him. Remember, a week later, some secretaries, other executives, and I went with Troy to the coast to finalize a huge project. He had a private jet chartered, and it was thrilling. Troy secured a multi-million-dollar deal, and everyone celebrated on the way back. A few drinks, some happy hugs and kisses, and suddenly I found myself in the airplane restroom with Troy. I couldn't help but respond, "Amy, I can see how all that glamour weakened you. Getting messed around in a truck, then joining the Mile High Club in a restroom. What was next on your high society checklist?" "A gangbang at the bus station. No wonder you couldn't resist." "Kevin, I'm not proud of what I did. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you what happened. After that trip, I gave in and started enjoying the lifestyle. Plays, fine wine, expensive food, and jewelry. At first, it was just when you were away, but then it turned into lunchtime rendezvous. I became so comfortable that I started resenting you and our life. I knew then that I had put our relationship in serious trouble. The sad part is, it wasn't really Troy's money. It was all from the corporation, King One Developers. Troy didn't have much money of his own. His 2 ex-wives took most of his salary. His Hummer was leased, and even the house, Rolex watches, and most of his possessions were in the company's name. Amy looked at me. "So, Kevin, that's my sorry tale. Do you have any questions?" "Just a few, Amy." I folded my hands on the table. "If you were getting the lifestyle you wanted, why didn't you just divorce me right away? Why all the secretive cheating for another year and a half? What was the thrill of bouncing between Prince Troy's riches and slumming it with your pauper husband's modest means?" Amy averted her gaze. "Kevin, initially I didn't want to hurt you. We'd been together since grade school, and you were my best friend. I kept telling myself it was just a phase and it would pass. You would never find out or be hurt, and we'd live happily ever after. But it was tough. All of the new things I experienced made me feel like royalty. That sense of power was addictive. For the first time, I wasn't the outsider looking in at the candy store. I kept postponing ending my involvement with Troy. I felt like a fly trapped in honey." Amy wiped the drool from the corner of her mouth again. "When you found me in Troy's bedroom, I was in a panic. I was convinced you'd never take me back after what I'd done. I felt like I'd crossed a line, with no return. Even if it was with Troy, it was better than having nothing." "Amy, what about the option of telling the truth?" I said with sarcasm. "We might have worked through this if you had come to me after the first time." "Kevin, I know it's hard to believe, but I was planning to end it in 2 days. Even if you hadn't found out, I was going to quit my job and stop the whole affair that Friday. Cold turkey. I was determined to focus on you, on us, on our marriage, and our future. I had already printed, signed, and dated my resignation letter. It was in my desk drawer at work. Nice try, Amy. Now you're making me regret interrupting you and Troy. If only I had waited 2 more days, all this could have been avoided. It's all my fault. I was such a fool." My voice dripped with irony. "I suppose you just happen to have that letter with you right now." "No, Kevin, I can't prove it or disprove it. It doesn't help now, but after I moved in with Troy, things got boring. It was all about him. I found more pleasure alone or with my vibrator." "Okay, Amy, this leads to a typical male question. Was it because Troy was better than me in bed?" I noticed that Amy was hesitating, searching for the right words. "Amy, come on. If I wanted someone to lie about my abilities, I would hire a girl of easy virtue. If you're not a girl of easy virtue, there's no need to lie. Just tell me the truth." "Kevin," Amy began, Troy was a little bigger than you. Well, down there. But not by much. There was nothing special about it. You and I were the first to meet each other. And before Troy, you were the only man I'd ever kissed. I knew your body as well as I knew my own. I knew what you liked, when you liked it, and how you liked it. And I knew you were just as good to me. In this regard, we have always been good together, no complaints. But Troy was, older and more experienced. During this time, he had many partners and he knew many different ones, receptions. He enjoyed making me do things. Some of them I didn't like, others I liked. Like the emergency entrance you never gave me, I interjected. Yeah, well, not really, Kevin, Amy replied. Troy really liked the back entrance. I've never really enjoyed it. I put up with it, even pretended to like it. I felt like I was, I am indebted to Troy for everything he did for me and gave me. You mean payment for services rendered, I clarified. Kevin, I wasn't a girl of easy virtue, if that's what you mean, Amy said firmly. Amy, what do you call someone who commits intimate acts in exchange for something? It was different, Amy said stiffly. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duckling. It's just another name for a girl of easy virtue, I began. Seriously, have you ever slept with anyone else in our new house? In our bed? No, Kevin, never, Amy exclaimed. Troy wanted this, but for me it wasn't about Roman or Troy or even you. It was all about lifestyle, things, people, places. I wanted to feel for once in my life what a first-class life is like. I wanted to escape, well, rise above it. Amy waved her hand around the dining room. Don't go back to that. Amy, it seemed to me that Troy had no problem sharing you with anyone during the year and a half that you cheated on me. Did he continue to give you as generously to his friends or other people as you moved in with him? Troy was very jealous, Kevin. He wanted me to leave you as soon as we started dating. You know. But I ignored his remark. I've never had a relationship with both of you on the same day. Troy liked to flaunt me, but he hated the idea of me talking to other men and constantly accused me of cheating on him. Ironically, I now know that he had girls everywhere, not to mention the call girls he dated when he left town. However, Troy always pushed me to have a threesome with another woman. One day with his second wife, I finally gave in. Troy was still on good terms with her. I didn't really like it. She looked like a trophy wife, straight out of a Hollywood movie. A thick blonde with lush hair. What was the difference between you and her? I asked. Touché, Amy grimaced. As sad as it sounds, I used to think that this beauty had everything. Money, looks, a front row seat on a plane, the lifestyle that I want. I used to make fun of such tasteless fools, and then I became one of them myself. Amy got better. I started turning into a plastic Barbie. Did I pay for all of Barbie's makeup? Or did Troy contribute to the purchase of silicone? Amy winced again. Kevin, it wasn't your money. Troy hid the cost of the operation in the budget of the project he was running. I'm afraid the auditors will demand a refund. You've always been good at negotiating, Amy. Maybe you can convince the bankers to be content. You could use some of the betting techniques that Troy taught you to make a deal. Kevin, I can't live like this. I just want to wither away and die. Well, Amy, if you want to follow Troy's example and get out of this life, there's nothing I can do to help you. I mean, I have a garage, but I don't have a car at the moment. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have continued to bully Amy. It was like baiting a defenseless animal. Still, I couldn't help myself. The deep-seated anger kept rising to the surface. I thought I'd forgotten Amy. But is that really the case? They say love and hate are two sides of the same coin. I couldn't tell if my feelings were disgust at what she had become, or anger at what she had done to me, to us, to our relationship. Kevin, Amy began, I know a lot has happened. But before all this chaos, We were always there for each other. I really need you right now. We've been together most of our lives, and we've both grown and changed. Can't we try to develop what we once had? I got up. Amy, I'd rather chew the foil and shave my head with a cheese grater. I finished my already cold coffee. I don't recognize you anymore, and I don't trust you. How can I be sure that you haven't stashed away a fortune in cash and jewelry? Maybe you're just waiting for the right moment to make fun of me, leaving me with a bag in my hands. Amy leaned back in her chair, feeling defeated. Kevin, I've never laughed at you. You can do whatever you want with me. I promise I won't leave you again. Please, I need your help right now. I'm sorry, Amy, but I can't take that risk anymore. The stakes are too high. I can't help you with anything. Can't or won't? Amy asked. Does it really matter? I replied. At that moment, the door opened and Lourdes came in. She was wearing a colorful medical uniform in which she worked from shift 3 to 11 at the nursing home. I was surprised to realize that Amy and I had been talking for so long. It was almost midnight. Oh, hi, Lourdes said, assessing the situation before approaching Amy. She bent down slightly to extend her right hand. I'm Lourdes. And who are you? Amy managed to raise her hand to shake Lourdes's hand. I'm Amy. Lourdes sat up in surprise, but quickly pulled herself together, taking a closer look at Amy, noting her sluggish handshake as well as her facial features. Bell's palsy? Lourdes asked, pointing at Amy's face. Excuse me? Amy replied. Bell's palsy, Lourdes clarified, watching Amy's expression. This is a condition in which the nerve controlling the facial muscles is damaged, which leads to paralysis. This is a fairly common herpes disease. I don't have herpes, Amy said defensively, touching her face. Then she relented. But I understand why you think that after what I did to Kevin. Amy sighed and started explaining the whole story to Lourdes. When Amy finished, Lourdes asked if she could talk to me in the kitchen. Kevin, Lourdes began, we can't just throw Amy out on the street. Okay, I said. I'll call one of Jose's sons. They can take Amy to the shelter. Lourdes gripped my arm so tightly that I could feel her nails pressing into my skin. Kevin, you can't be serious. You can't leave a woman in that state at one of those places. They'll tear her apart. What do you want from me, Lourdes? Should we invite Amy to join us in bed? A threesome? You heard her. It wouldn't be Amy's first time with another woman. Or maybe you're interested in that now. I raised an eyebrow and gave her a playful look. Lourdes let go of my arm and swatted at me. You men are all the same. Put away your fantasies. More like my nightmare, I retorted. Losing you to Amy would drive me to despair. Whatever, Lourdes said, rolling her eyes. Amy can sleep on the couch tonight. We'll sort out the rest in the morning. What is this, Lourdes? Some Latin twist on the Italian mafia's keep your friends close but your enemies closer. I saw you jab at Amy with that Bell's palsy herpes comment. Lourdes looked down. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. It was nasty to kick someone when they're down. She took a deep breath. Then I remembered WWJD. It's only one night. You better check the silverware when you wake up, I said. Kevin, we don't have any valuable silverware, Lourdes replied. Lourdes, aren't you worried about my ex-wife given her reputation staying in this house? I asked. Lourdes looked at me seriously for a moment. I know you, and more importantly, I trust you. Besides, if you left me for someone with fake lips, you were never really mine. Lourdes, that's never going to happen. Looks like you're stuck with me. I gave her a kiss. The next morning at 6 a.m. I was in the kitchen wearing my maintenance coveralls. I wasn't flying today, but I had 3 houses to clean for Jose's wife, Maria's company. Good morning, Kevin, Amy said from the entrance, wrapped in a blanket and looking like she'd just woken up from the couch. I grunted in response and focused on my coffee. Do you still have our boxes of postcards? Amy asked, yawning. They were your postcards, Amy, and no, I don't have them anymore. Where did they go? Amy pressed. I burned them. In fact, I roasted marshmallows over them. Sort of a symbolic end to our past. Oh, Amy said, looking disappointed. I sat down and stirred my coffee, and we were both silent for a moment. Kevin, I just want to thank you for letting me stay overnight, Amy said. Don't thank me, Amy. I wasn't exactly thrilled about it. Thank Lourdes, I replied. Yes, Lourdes, Amy said, pausing. You and she... Her voice trailed off. I said nothing. My relationship with Lourdes was none of Amy's concern. Kevin, Amy began, wiping some drool from her lip. I don't know if I said it last night, but I am really sorry. Sorry for what, Amy? For cheating. For leaving. For taking all the money. For destroying our marriage? For lying. For trying to get more money after bankrupting me? For coming back to disrupt my life? Or are you sorry that you no longer have all the things Troy gave you? You need to be more specific. I'm sorry I ever wanted anything more than you, Amy said quietly. Sounds like buyer's remorse to me, I replied, getting up and pouring the rest of my coffee down the sink. Tell me, Amy, if everything had stayed the same, and you still had all the perks of the last 3 years, would you still be here today? Kevin, I'm sorry I ever left you, Amy said as I washed out my coffee cup. I felt a touch on my shoulder and turned around. Amy was standing there completely naked, the blanket pooled at her feet. With a silicone body and a half-frozen face, an almost 2-meter blonde with double D is another sight. I see someone is pleased that I stayed the night, Amy said, pointing to the tent below my feet. It's a pretty early greeting. Make no mistake, Amy, I replied, reaching for the blanket at her feet. I've been without it for so long that now I feel like just reading the results of women's golf competitions. I handed Amy her blanket. Kevin, I was serious last night. I am yours and yours alone. You can do anything with me, anytime, anywhere. Amy held out her good hand. I've already read this message, Amy. I'll pass. I walked out the door. It figures that my first major conflict with Lourdes would be over, Amy. I just wanted Amy out of my life. Let her be someone else's problem. Lourdes and Maria teamed up against me. Jose, Maria's husband, wisely kept his distance. I wished I could have done the same. All that talk about Christian charity, forgiveness, and turning the other cheek sounded good in theory, but was awful in practice. But when 2 Catholic Latin women who believe God is on their side decide to act, they're a force of nature. They were adamant that it was our duty to help those in need if we could. Bread cast upon the waters and all that. They tried to explain that forgiveness didn't mean I had to forget what Amy had done. They argued that saints throughout history had forgiven those who wronged them. Even Jesus had forgiven Judas for the ultimate betrayal. I pointed out that I was no saint, and any resemblance between me and Jesus was purely superficial. Amy and Maria weren't fazed, arguing that I had once loved Amy enough to marry her. Despite Amy's recent behavior, her history of devotion to me earned her some right to assistance now. Good God, I would have preferred to deal with a pair of rabid badgers over Lourdes and Maria. Lourdes brushed off Amy's recent attempt at seduction as a result of stress, PTSD from the sudden changes, and an attempt to reconnect with the past. Lourdes is a better person than I am. I couldn't buy into such nonsense. Maria found Amy a job cleaning houses. The best I could do was to have Amy stay in the mother-in-law apartment above my garage, which Lourdes arranged for her. Amy paid a small rent, which helped us. Lourdes and Amy would sometimes sit on our front porch and chat. I tried to avoid Amy as much as possible. Who wants to be reminded of a train wreck? Lourdes said Amy just worked and went to church, never leaving the garage apartment. I had a place I wanted Amy to go, but I kept that to myself. Okay. I muttered it a few times. In truth, I must admit that Amy never made any further advances or suggestive moves towards me. After a few months, things had finally calmed down. I was walking up the porch steps, returning from my flights, when I saw Lourdes chatting with an older woman with silver hair who looked vaguely familiar. I extended my hand to introduce myself, but the woman with the silver hair pulled me into a big hug. "Kevin, this is Mrs. Talon," Lourdes said, "from the golf course." Suddenly, it clicked. She was the wife of the man who had suffered a heart attack that day on the golf course. Now I had a name to match the face. I had sent her away to get help, while Jose and I performed CPR on her husband. Come in," Mrs. Talon said, pulling me inside. "He's been waiting for you all day and is as cranky as an old bear." "Who is waiting for me?" I asked as we entered the dining room. The man we had rescued from the golf course was sitting at my dining room table, which was covered with official-looking documents. He had silver hair like his wife and exuded an air of authority. A cane was propped against his chair. "Damn it, boy, get in here!" the silver-haired man boomed. "I'm Boone Talon, and I've been waiting a long time to meet you again." Boone Talon picked up his cane and tapped it on the chair next to him. "Sit your happy self down right here." Boone Talon was a man accustomed to having people follow his orders. I took a seat next to him, and Boone gave me a solid smack on the back, nearly toppling me from my chair. "Well, damn boy, mind if I call you Kevin?" Boone Talon said, not pausing for a reply. "I owe you my life, and Boone Talon always settles his debts." He grabbed a stack of papers from the table and dropped them into my lap. "Now listen up, Kevin. That's a personal services contract. I've got a Learjet 60, and you're going to be one of my personal pilots once you're certified for it. The contract lasts 15 years with annual raises and bonuses. It's renewable every year by you, doesn't matter if I'm dead or alive. The only way you'll mess this up is if you crash the damn plane. If you do that, you're dead, so you won't get paid anyway. Doc says I can't fly anymore, but I need to get places. The Lear stays here, I call, you haul, got it?" I glanced at the salary and was stunned. The amount was outrageous, like winning the lottery. "Mr. Talon," I began, "this is incredibly generous, but—" "But what, Kevin?" Boone Talon cut me off, his silver hair gleaming. "You're saying my life isn't worth a few measly bucks? Hell, the life insurance company should be paying you that much to thank you for saving my sorry self at the golf course. Keeping me alive meant they didn't have to pay out my policy." I was at a loss for words, but Boone Talon's energy was unflagging. "Next up, Kevin, is this pile of papers. They're the deed to this house, paid in full. Think of it as a signing bonus. I don't want my pilots worrying about some damn mortgage while they're flying me around. I need their full attention in the cockpit. There's also the title to a brand new F-250 Power Stroke pickup truck. You can pick it up at the dealer tomorrow. When I call, I don't want you waiting at some damn bus stop, got it?" Boone Talon's silver hair shifted slightly as he slammed his cane on the table before continuing. "Forget about that nonsense with the pampered idiots at Nine Rivers Country Club trying to hit you with $250,000 for messing up some grass while getting me to the hospital. I got more lawyers in my phone than there are in this whole town. I've unleashed my New York attorneys on those Nine Rivers fools. Those greedy jerks were trying to double dip, collecting insurance on the damage and coming after you too. The people from Nine Rivers should be sending you an apology letter this week, along with a fully paid-up membership. Now, you young lady," Boone Talon said, directing his cane at Lourdes, "we need to get you that RN license. I've got 2 instructors from the Kaplan Testing Center holed up in a downtown hotel. They'll be your personal tutors. I want you to pass that test in 90 days. After that, All Saint Hospital will hire you for pediatric and cardiac care. After a year, you'll be trained as my flying nurse to keep the insurance guys happy. There's also a contract for you in this stack of papers on the table. Your student loan debts are now history, paid off in full. Also, I do a lot of angel flights with kids on my jet, so make sure you study hard." Lourdes rushed over and gave Boone Talon a big hug. "Careful, sweetheart," Boone Talon teased. "A young thing hugging me like that might just freak out my pacemaker." "Mr. Talon, I began, addressing our silver-haired benefactor. I don't want to seem ungrateful, but Jose, my chief mechanic. Boone Talon interrupted me. The Cuban fellow with the headstrong Latin wife, Maria? Boone chuckled. I've taken care of it. Jose is heading to Bombardier Lear to get certified for the Lear 65 series. The jet is under a maintenance contract with your previous aviation company. Jose will be the lead technician with a significant salary increase. I couldn't get either Jose or his wife Maria to accept any payment. It took my private investigators a few days to locate all the universities their children attend. Tuition, housing, books, and any loans or fees are all covered. I'd rather deal with the IRS than go through Maria again. Her cleaning company is about to see a big boost in contracts. Just keep it quiet. Bill Talon used his silver cane to rise from his chair. Before I go, one last thing. You two need to head to the preacher, priest, justice of the peace, rabbi, imam, whoever, and get married. I don't like my employees living in sin. Lourdes and I did get married. I had envisioned a simple, small-scale event, but Lourdes, Maria, and the rest of the Latina women were fully engaged in planning. They informed me that my role was limited to picking up our tuxedos and showing up at the church at the designated time. The wedding turned into a grand affair at 9 Rivers Country Club. Our wealthy patron, Boone Talon, the same one who had the heart attack adventure with us at the golf course, was a big fan of parties. He insisted on covering the entire cost, including the honeymoon cruise, which he referred to as a wedding gift. Amy attended the wedding. She's doing better, though she still relies on a cane and struggles with short-term memory issues, which can make her seem a bit scattered. The routine of house cleaning helps her stay organized. Amy continues to rent out the small apartment above the garage. I am polite to her but cautious, like one would be around a dog that has previously bitten. Amy is currently seeing someone from the cleaning crew. He's a nice, down-to-earth guy they met at church, and I wish them well. My new job combines my two passions, Lourdes and flying. Lourdes sends Amy postcards from every destination, regardless of its size. Amy and Lourdes still spend some evenings on the porch, with Lourdes detailing each postcard's location to Amy. However, this will soon change, as Lourdes will need to take a break from flying. The good news is that I'll soon be a proud father. I will soon have 3 loves.